I'm Taylor Hart.
And I'm Avonlea Roy.
And you guys, back in 2018, Avonlea and I got together and we did a little experiment. We created a course to help other people who have a dream to become writers. And we recorded a live series of video trainings together. And the recordings, they've kind of just been sitting out in cyberspace.
Yeah, so Taylor recently contacted me and asked me what I thought about putting this training out there in all of its messiness and imperfection, in the hope that it might help some of you who maybe has been displaced by the COVID-19 pandemic.
That's right. We have both in our lives faced hard things, and we want you guys to know we're there for you. We love you, and we want to be part of a solution. These recordings, you guys, they're totally raw and unedited, but they're 100% value. We hope you'll use them, benefit from them, and when you do write your book,
not if, but when,
then you'll let us know. And you'll share it on social media. You'll tag us, Taylor Hart, Avonlea Roy, because these are going to be coming out. They're going to be coming out right now.
All the videos, all at once, they're there. So just go and enjoy the videos, share your success with us, and happy writing.
Happy writing.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
How's everybody doing today? Welcome to lesson two in Taylor Hart's How to Build a Six-Figure Writing Business. We're so excited to have you here today. It is a gorgeous autumn day in the Salt Lake Valley.
So pretty.
I don't know why we're in here recording when we could be out there playing and having fun, but the truth is we're here because
we're kind of nerdy. We like it.
And we're passionate about giving somebody else this content, this material to help make your life better and to make the world a better place.
Yep.
So here we are, instead of up in the gorgeous Utah mountains.
We can go there later.
So quickly, for those of you who are just joining us, last week we covered a few things, kind of the basics of what this program is all about. What did we talk about? We talked about your 3 secrets to building a 6-figure writing business like Taylor has. So our first secret is your playbook.
The playbook. And we're talking about that today.
We're going to go over that in detail today. And then the second secret is
writing crap.
Writing crap.
It's important. It's an important secret.
And the third secret is joining the bestseller revolution.
The indie bestseller revolution. Now is the best time to write.
So we're going to go ahead and dive in with what we talked about last week. That every week before we jump into the really juicy content, which you guys, we have some good stuff for you today. Taylor's going to take us through her mindset. She's got this great book that's coming out soon about
mastering the mental game.
Okay, so every week for about 10 to 15 minutes, she's going to share with us these enriching success principles.
I love Avonlea. Isn't she so complimentary?
Hey, you're the one who's done it. I want to be like you.
Okay, you know what? I am so excited today. And I was telling Avonlea earlier that what is the thing that hangs up writers? When people come talk to me and say, oh man, I'm in the middle of this book, but I'm stuck. How do you write all the time? How do you write so prolifically? There are secrets. And I think part of it, last week we talked about having a ritual of gratitude, going through that every morning, getting your mind really clear. Today I want to talk to you guys about the theory of cybernetics.
Which I've never heard of. This morning she just announces she's doing this and I'm like, ooh, okay, where's my notebook?
I am fascinated by the theory of cybernetics, and what it means, is that we are programmed to hit certain levels. We program ourselves, without even knowing it. Bob Proctor, who I consider a huge mentor, he's amazing. Look up his stuff. He's awesome. But he talks about a heater in a home, And when that heater dips down below, if it's on 68, if it dips down, automatically it kicks on, to heat the home. And if it's too hot, the AC will kick on, to put it at that perfect level. And so you look at like people that are succeeding, okay? They have programmed themselves to be at that level. And, you know, you look at my husband, he works for a company, but the sales team, you can go in there. He talks about how you can go in there and you can ask from month to month, okay, who's going to be the top salesman? And the guy that's in charge of it can not only tell you for that month, he can tell you for the whole year. How? Based on what they've done, right? And so, but how do you change that? How do you reprogram? If you want to write best-selling books, how do you do that? And so that's what I think is really fascinating, is that we can actually change our own programming. Okay. And so if you remember last week, I had you write down your goals.
Yeah.
Right. I had you write down some beliefs that you need to have to attain those goals. Okay. And that's how, as you get to the nitty gritty of those beliefs, like what kind of person, I can't tell you what those beliefs are for you. I wish I could. I wish someone could tell me for me. Right. But that's the work that's necessary. And so you find the belief you need to create that income. Okay. The beliefs that are wrong, you find those beliefs and you start systematically going through and changing them. You eradicate them, right? And part of it is maybe you can't eradicate it so quickly, but you practice over and over through, I mean, I do affirmations every day.
So do I.
I do incantations where you're, you know, feeling so grateful. I mean, that's something that Bob Proctor talks about. I'm so happy and grateful that I'm a best-selling author. And you get emotionally involved in that statement. So you're not just chanting, I'm a best-selling author, I'm a best-selling author. I'm so happy and grateful that I can bring it every day, that I can write fiction that's going to change people, that's going to touch people, right? And you start believing that over and over. You say, you know, there's another example of how we have math so specific that we can take a rocket and land it on the moon. Okay? So we can take a heat-seeking missile and it can go to another country and it can get off course, but that missile has cybernetic units in it, so it will get back on course and it will hit the target. So even if stuff happens to us, right? Even if this last week I've had a cold and I was kind of like, oh man, you know, can I do this? Like I have these deadlines for myself I have to do. And then I had to be like, of course I can. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to get the rest I need. I had to talk myself through it. And that's some signs of successful people, successful writers, is that even when they have something that holds them back, they won't let it spiral, right? Maybe they're off course a little bit, but they'll course correct. And that's my challenge to you guys this week, is to really think about those things that are maybe taking you off the course you want to be on, and how you can course correct those through positive mental self-talk, through having your goal, having the belief you need to have, and really working on that belief. It's really important and valuable. And you guys, this is where the work really happens. Because if you see yourself as a best-selling author, I mean, I can't tell you for how many years I was telling myself that, chanting that before I became that. Okay? And you might feel, maybe you can't even share this with people yet because it sounds woo-woo, kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
you have to go chant stuff to yourself in the bathroom. But do it. Try it. Why not? What do you have to lose? Right? What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I love that because I do a daily divine devotion.
Yes.
That I learned, I think we talked about this last week, like Tony Robbins teaches this. I taught it in my coaching program. I've seen various iterations of a power hour or whatever people call it, a sacred 10. And I do gratitude, prayer, affirmations, and goals.
Perfect.
And I know you described when you go out and do your gratitude and your visualization, you're often out on a walk with your dog.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Every day.
I sit down at my desk and I light a candle, because once my therapist told me that when we light a candle, we invoke the divine. And so I like that thought. I light a little candle and I sit and I have a notebook about this size. It's not the same one, but it's like not a huge 8.5 by 11. It's just a smaller sheet of paper. And I write down my gratitude until I've filled up a whole page. And I write down things that I'm thankful for. And then I go into my prayer, and then I go into affirmations, and I turn the page over and I write affirmations until I fill up the page. Because I've heard there's something that happens with the pen to paper.
That's right.
That when we write, it like travels up your hands and into your heart and your brain. And like
I love
programs. So that works for me, and that's the way. And then my final thing is my goals, and I get out my day planner and I start writing down my goals for the day. But that's kind of the way that I implement some of the things that you're talking about. But I love the incantations. I'm going to start jumping up in my house and screaming.
That's right. But you know, it's funny because a few years ago, I have a son that's 10 and he wanted this like major truck Jeep thing for Christmas. And there was no way my husband and I were going to get that. I mean, he started talking about it, you know, 9 months before. And he would actually come home and be like, Mom, is that Jeep here yet? Oh, Dad, is it? And it was seriously like by the time Christmas came, my husband and I were laughing because we're like, how can we not get this? We've seen how happy he is that he has it. And kids do this, right? Kids naturally manifest what they want and they just become obsessed with it. And I don't know.
That's so cute.
I'm like, be more childlike, right? Like, yeah, I've already done this.
I love that. So just to answer one question, Bob Proctor.
Bob Proctor is the name of the mentor that I watch his stuff a lot on YouTube. He does programs and he's awesome. Yeah.
I first heard of him from the movie The Secret, which again is one of those things that people are like, that's kind of woo-woo, that's kind of out there. Like, what, you just think and you get what you want in life, right?
Well, yeah. But the thinking those thoughts actually changes the way your habits and rituals and routines and what you do.
Absolutely.
So
it's
makes
like
you different.
The minute changes in your life that come from thinking differently.
It's true.
It's like the spider on the spider web. One little trigger kind of sends out a wave reaction and it leads you down a different course than maybe you would have gone down if you were thinking different thoughts. So Bob Proctor, and that is our lesson on mastering the mental game, unless you have anything else to add to that.
That's great.
Okay. Well then,
Okay.
For those of you who are thinking about writing a book, you're here, obviously, for that reason. And probably one of the first questions that I think you get asked, and I know I mentioned this to you once, we were standing in the gym, back to school, our kids had the same gym class, and I'm like, Taylor, I'm thinking about writing again, but I don't know what to write. And you gave me some advice, so let's talk about that.
I always say, write what you love, okay? Write the movies you like, write the books that you're obsessed with. Write the things that you think about, that you enjoy. Because if you don't, you're not going to like it. You're going to quit, right? And why don't you tell them about your cool exercise you did. And she came up with this awesome homework for you guys.
Well, I attended a workshop once. It wasn't this kind of a workshop. It was about success in relationships. And part of being successful in life is kind of like knowing who you are and the gifts that you're supposed to bring to this world. And they said those messages are hidden all around you. Like, you already surround yourself with the truth of who you are.
I like that.
Doesn't that kind of make sense? You're already surrounded by the things that you love. So they had us fill out a worksheet, and we had to write down our favorite book, our favorite movie, our favorite song. And then we had to write down the adjectives, like 5 adjectives that would describe those things. And then you start to kind of look for the common threads. And so we thought, for those of you who are thinking about writing, maybe a good exercise would be to come up with a list. And this is your homework for this week. Come in early. We're only 15 minutes in. We've already got homework. Make a list of your 5 favorite books, your 5 favorite movies, and your 5 favorite songs. And then come up with a list of 3 to 5 adjectives for each one of those things. So that's 15 times like another 3 to 5. Like, that's a lot of words, but hopefully you'll start to come up with a pattern. So like, I was just filling out a worksheet, for example, and like, we should have something to email you that you can fill out. But I put in examples like, okay, Gone with the Wind was maybe your favorite book. And then your favorite movie is Pride and Prejudice. Well, the common theme among those two would be their historical romance. Yeah. And so maybe if you love historical romance, that could be a genre that is worth exploring for you. So we're going to test something out here on Zoom. I learned a cool trick last week. For those of you who are participating today, I am going to launch a poll. So if you're on your phone or your computer, get ready to take this quiz, this little poll.
We just points or something.
We just want to know what type of book are you planning to write? Obviously, Taylor has made a successful career writing clean romance novels. She writes fiction. So when we say adult fiction, at the top of that poll there, we're not talking about adult bookstore fiction. We're just talking about like books for grown-ups.
Yeah.
But just curious, I know you've just written a nonfiction that we were just talking about.
That's right.
Some of the people viewing maybe have had some interest in writing something other than fiction. So about 5 more seconds here if you guys want to quickly fill in. It's multiple choice. You can fill in as many as you'd like to. And then we'll take a look and see what are people hoping to write.
I love that we can do that.
I know, isn't that so cool? Technology, awesome. Man. Okay, so our big winner here, clear winner, we have about 50% who say they want to write adult fiction, which is great. That's her genre that we're talking about. But we do have some creative nonfiction and memoir. We have some people in nonfiction and then other. Curious to know what that other is. If you want to leave a little comment in the chat box for us. Okay, so let's share the results really fast with our viewers. So everybody can see that really quick. Okay, well, that's great that so many people are interested in writing fiction, because that's kind of where we're going to head next. So yeah, I sat down to write my book after Taylor had taught me the playbook, which we're going to get to that next, but she taught me the playbook and I'm kind of starting to write, and all of a sudden I was like, how much am I supposed to write? How long am I supposed to keep doing this? How long does this go on? And then, okay, well, how long should a chapter be? And so that got me into this thought of like word count. And I kind of did some research. I was Googling and different things. Okay, the length of a novel and the word count, what that should be. And then about how many chapters each book should be. And so we're going to talk about that for a second.
Okay. So when Avonlea started talking to me about this, the most fascinating trend right now, you guys, is that books have gotten shorter. Okay, and there's a couple of reasons why. The biggest reason is because everyone's reading, and now I'm looking for my phone, on their phone, right?
Yeah, where'd mine go?
Swipe, swipe, swipe. You want to read on your phone, you want to read on your tablet. And
Kindle readers.
The Kindle readers, and that's where you're making money. I mean, you guys, I make pretty much all of my money on digital books.
Which is amazing.
Well, I always think of Benjamin Franklin and how, electricity, like he would be so fascinated that I can create something on a computer, upload it to Amazon, they send it out to other people's gadgets, and I get paid electron. It's all energy, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that cool? And so that's cool, but it has changed the market. So,
well, really, I just think, how many people have said, oh, I don't know if I'll ever switch over to, because I just love the feel of a book in my hands. But this is proof that people are making the switch. They're converting to electronic formats.
And I can guarantee you, if you talk to your teenager, he will choose the phone over any paper book. Right?
Mine still do paper books. Okay. I think
but they love their phones.
They do.
Right? We all get used to, it's not a moral discussion for me. I mean, I go back, take the phone for what it is, but everyone's reading on it. Everyone has one. But it has changed. So a book used to be, even in romance, about 65,000 words.
Yeah. Okay. See, and I was thinking it was like anywhere between 60 and 80 from what I had done the research. Yeah. 60,000 to 80,000 words historically. And when I started writing 10 years ago, 13 years ago, that's what I was writing. Longer books, about 65,000 to 80,000 words. Within different genres, like fantasy and sci-fi, they will still be longer. Because of why? You have to build a world.
Lots of world building.
Yeah, Harry Potter, like you think about those Harry Potter books, they just got longer and longer and longer. Yeah. And we read them and we loved them.
But in contemporary romance right now, word counts are between like 30 and 45,000, you guys. I mean, think about that. I have my author, the groups I write with, I do a Snow Valley series, I do a billionaire series, a football series, a Navy SEAL series, but I have other authors that were always like, our target is between 30 and 45K. Because if you get longer than that, your reviews start telling you, this was such a long book. This was such a long book. Now, randomly you'll get a review that'll say, this is a novella. This wasn't very long. But the trend is for these shorter books. Now, that being said, you can still write a longer book. Okay, sometimes, like 2 books ago that I put out, it was about 65K because the characters wouldn't shut up. They just wouldn't stop. Okay, and it becomes a real thing, right? A real living thing as an author that you kind of have to navigate.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so novellas are kind of the thing.
yeah, they're about 20K. That's short. Okay, but they're about 20K. That's a novella.
Oh, okay. I was thinking a novella is 40,000 and a novel is 70,000.
No, not now.
So in today's world,
thing.
a novella is now 20,000. So it's shifted. Novels are shorter and novellas are shorter than what they historically were.
Well, and I was talking to Emily earlier about this, but you think about old fiction or old movies. Okay, like think about Hoosiers, right? I watched that the other day. I have 4 boys. We watched it on a Sunday afternoon, and you start and you're going through town, you're going through the fields, and you're kind of, they're running all the opening credits, right? Okay, now you go to any sports movie, action movie, anything, boom, first moment, they bring the action. They're like, boom, even if they're taking that action from later in the book or the film and putting it to the front, you've seen this a lot in shows. They'll show you, boom, any superhero movie, you're right in the action, right? Okay, that's because our attention spans have changed. No, they really have.
No, they have.
And it's these trends happen in writing and story, and that's something important to know when you're a writer. And I'm always fascinated watching a different movie. Now, usually in a romance, it's the cute meet, right? It's that first scene, bring the heat, is what we're talking
about. Yeah.
You're meeting that person, having a little, it's not all this ordinary world. If it is, you kind of get bored. And now that we're talking about this, I would be interested for you guys to come back next week and be like, oh, I noticed it in this show, or you can even say opposite of me.
So the attention span question, that's interesting, because when I was in high school, which I hate to admit was like 20 years ago, guys.
She looks so young.
You. I had a teacher who would create these slideshows for our class, and she was like, yeah, I have to do this for the Sesame Street generation because you guys have short attention spans. And it was like, we grew up watching Sesame Street, and the screen would change frequently. And there was actually something that I heard in a workshop, I don't know, it was within the last 10 to 15 years, but they were talking about the flicker on a screen and how it's changed our brain patterns. Because back in when TV was brand new, you would have these scenes that the screen wouldn't change very often. It would stay focused on a scene for a while before. And so this is it's the effect that you get when you stand outside someone's house and you can see that the TV is on. You see the flicker. You know what I'm talking about?
Right, it draws your attention.
So the flicker has dramatically increased for today's world. So that means the action's changing a lot. When you watch a movie today,
iPads, right? And
you see a lot of flicker if you stood outside somebody's house and they were watching the Avengers, as opposed to if you stood out somebody's house and they were watching some really old movie, And If You're to Remember, or Gone with the Wind, like an old movie. The flicker pattern is going to be dramatically different.
Yeah.
So the same thing I would say is probably true in your writing.
It's true.
You have to change what's happening. You have to keep the pace moving today. Okay.
Yeah.
Well then, does that answer all those questions about, we were talking about how many words, how people are making money?
And chapters, chapter word count. Okay, here's the most important thing about chapters. You stay in one character's head, okay? Because sometimes you'll see people try and do it where they're shifting heads all the time. Point of view is what it's called. It's like whiplash. Right? And so, you can do that. I'm just telling you what works is to stay for that chapter. You stay in their head. You switch to the next chapter, you go to the next character. Really, 2 or 3 characters is probably max. In romance, I would say 2, because you're writing, male and female, but you get too many characters, you have this compassion fatigue by your audience, and they don't know who to care about. All right. Now, if you're watching a television show, that's kind of different. I have some shows I love, but you can be taken through the story.
Well, and there's
seeing
sagas
it.
that go on for season after season.
Right. So you're
Which you kind of,
B,
let's
C
be honest,
story.
you kind of do this with your books now because you have spin-off stories with all of your different characters.
I do. But I don't.
You've created this whole universe.
I do. I have a world. But I don't do like front story, backstory, ABC story. I usually only have 2 stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's the front story and the backstory. I don't have a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
Plots that.
So your super fans will pick up on, oh, I remember that character from the previous book.
They're so great.
But you don't like get into that character's head when you're focused on these 2 characters.
No.
Right.
I might have a cameo, you know, or we'll go to one of the concerts or something. But yeah. So for chapter length, I say it's up to you. I would kind of keep it consistent. And we'll talk about this more as we are going through writing the book. At the end of a book, when the action or the suspense increases, that's when you're doing what's called cross-cutting, right? So you're going to make it shorter. You're going to make it, well, this happened. You know, maybe it's they're building up to finding each other at the airport, that last airport scene, right? Or whatever it is. But you're running in his head and he falls, and then you're in her head and she's almost to the gateway, and then you're in his, but it's faster because you're building, you know, it's kind of with pacing of your story. So,
okay. Well, should we teach them how to pace a story?
Yeah.
Let's get to the juicy stuff. Like, we have some meat to give you right now. So this is the playbook. Lesson 2, and we're already diving right into the good stuff.
It's so much fun. Should we share the screen with them?
Yeah, let's do that.
You guys are going to get a lengthier version of this probably next week. But this is kind of just the bare bones basics.
Okay, here we are.
All right. So we're going to kind of talk about this. Okay, it's the first, in this first, like, bring the heat. It's what we were talking about. Like, it's when they meet. Usually the main characters either like each other, hate each other. There's some drama, right? But it brings them together.
Well, let's pause for a minute too, because I think we should point out this playbook, which we briefly touched on last week. Like, this is what you've come up with in your years of writing through reading multiple authors, through going to workshops. Like, there are so many different iterations of a playbook or a beat sheet or a template that help you create this outline. So this is kind of what you've distilled from all of your reading and studying and seminars and conferences, that you've been able to pull this together. And like, you guys have to understand, the big movie production houses, like, they have this figured out.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason why you can depend on the same production companies to deliver on it every time. And it's because they've figured out this formula, this secret sauce that we're sharing with you right now.
I know, it's exciting.
So point 1, start right off with some action.
Yeah, and just to touch on what Avonlea was saying, you guys, it is a labor of love, because I wrote my first book and I had an author friend of mine read it, and I hadn't gone off of any structure. Okay, I just written the book and kind of got lost in the characters and in the setting, and you know, every scene, you know, there's certain things scenes should do for you. One of them is pull the characters forward through your story. And I got back my book from this author that is a great friend of mine, and I cried for like a week. Okay, because I had asked her to give me her real feedback, right? But she's like going through like red ink, like, guess what? This scene needs to be cut. This isn't needed. Why do you have 10 characters? Cut this out. Do this, do that. And it really shook me up. And I remember after that, I went on this journey, like, you know what? There has to be a way, like, why do we like certain stories? And it led me on a path to finding people that had already found why. And, you know, I took tons of workshops. I read tons of books. And so when Avonlea's saying, it's what I've put together for myself when I write a romance, I go back to these beats, okay? And sometimes I do it organically. And guess what happens to me? I get stuck somewhere. I'll be in the story, I'll be 20,000 words in, and I'll be like, the story isn't working. And I'm like, oh, I have to go back to the beat sheet. And I'll go to the beat sheet and I'll figure out why. So this is invaluable to you.
Well, this is what you were saying. This shaves years off of your learning curve.
Years.
Off of the financial investment, off of the time investment. Like, this is cutting 5 years off of your writing career right here.
At least. So, you know, we're not going to get into a debate. There is a huge debate. Should a writer write organically? They're called pantsers in the writing world. Or should they write, you know, according to a structure? And there's arguments for both. I'm going to tell you right now, the people I know that are making 6 figures with me, they're using a beat sheet a lot of times because you can write faster, you can write better stories. It's what, you know, when you go to a movie and you walk out and you're like, oh, it was good, but there was something missing. Like, missed that, like, maybe you didn't even get that part where you cried, or, you know, or the action or something. There was that moment missing. It's because if you go back to those movies, now that we're going to teach you this, you're going to go back and say, it was missing the decision. It was missing the argument. It was missing. You're going to be able to point it out. And that's, in fact, maybe next week, we won't give you too much homework, but that'll be one of the things, is you can start deconstructing movies with the beat sheet.
Right.
Well,
and this also is very similar to the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell identified. So it's psychology, guys. It's out there. It's what we need in order to just really resonate with the story. So let's dive in. We have the playbook here for you, and you might hear us interchangeably refer to it as a template or a beat sheet. Beats meaning like it's timing. Like there are beats in music, right? It's timing. It's the same thing that has to happen in your story. There's timing. There's things that have to happen. Sometimes in the order that we prescribe it, you have learned how to kind of move some of those parts around. That's advanced. Let's not go there.
Okay.
Yet.
We won't overwhelm. We won't fire hose you.
Okay. All right. So we've kind of identified the very beginning is bring the heat.
Yeah. That first cute meet with the people, something good, bad, ugly happens, right? That makes them love them, hate them, notice them. Okay. I really like to write them where they hate each other. And that's fun.
Create a little tension right up front.
But it could be, I mean, I've done it a whole bunch of different ways. Okay. And then the next beat, life as we know it, is kind of like their current world. Then you go back to, what is the hero doing? You know, what's the hero up to? What's the hero, guy and girl?
Yeah, hero, heroine, guy, girl. What does their life look like
exactly
before the what? We'll get there.
Yeah. So, it could even just be like, maybe they're at a high place in their life. Maybe everything's going good. Maybe they're at a low place. It's usually one or the other, right? Or maybe it's just status quo. It's like, maybe the guy just has these things he does. He hangs out with his friends, play basketball, he works, he does this, right? Yep. He's pretty happy. And then
something happens to flip it all, like upset the apple cart, right? World gets turned upside down. Like you get knocked off your course.
Exactly. We're calling it the impetus, right? Because it's the start of something. Other people have called it the catalyst or the inciting incident. It's kind of the bad news, okay, for most people. And you know,
like you lost your job, or
or your girlfriend breaks up with you, right? Or
your wife leaves you.
Yeah, or you're sick, right? Or something that changes your whole, sets you up on a new path, a new journey. So, okay. So we have the crazy thing that happened. And then we have an argument, because the character, their whole world is in chaos, right?
And this isn't necessarily an argument between characters, although it could be.
Right. It's like the pro-con list that the characters would write. Like,
what am I going to do now?
Yeah. If I've lost my job, should I move? Should I stay? Should I take
my dream?
Should I take that cross-country trip I've always wanted to take with my dad? Right? Can't you see this starting to form a story? Right? And all these things I've always wanted to do. I have 30 grand in my account. I'm going to take this trip. I'm going to bring my dad, but then I have to be with my dad, maybe, right? Like they start doing the list. Next one.
All right. So we go from, we've thought out all of the things I could possibly do. And then the hero or the heroine makes the decision.
And they have to make it. It can't just happen to them. Okay. And that's if I'm reading a book or watching a movie and the hero doesn't make the decision, it's weak. Okay. And that's
because you're just
super
forced
important
into it.
Yeah.
Instead of,
you can't have so we're kind of teaching you how to world build with this beat sheet, but we're going to talk about this a little bit later. Character. Okay. And you guys know this. If you love a character, right, even if they're a bad character, they might be a villain, might be the hero, they might be whatever they are, you're invested. You're going to keep reading the story, watching the book, even if they're making stupid decisions, you're going to keep, you're invested. But they have to be the ones that make it. The world just can't, you have the shift that upsets the world, but then they have to decide. They have to be proactive. Okay. And that's that beat. It's very important.
okay. So then we go into a new world, right?
It's a new world. It's a new world. And so it's the B story. Okay. And something that I think is important to talk about is the B story when you're writing a romance. Okay. Romance is the A story, right? In a romance. The B story in a romance is like how that world has shifted upside down. So it can still have some of the same characters in it, but it's how it changes once these two are forced to be together. Okay. And so you could, or it could have a new cast of characters too. It could have more characters in it. And we're going to kind of, I'm excited, you guys, because Avonlea has like made herself an expert on the movie Nemo when looking at beats. And we're going to talk about that at the end because Nemo has some great, like, B story characters.
For sure. Yeah. So after we kind of give you this high level overview, we're going to plug in Finding Nemo so you can just kind of see how this works. Because I feel like Disney just hits it every time. This is why we go to Disney movies and the Pixar movies and why Star Wars is working, and Avengers. Like, Disney has the formula figured out.
Oh, yeah.
And they know it.
Learn from the people doing it.
Right. All right. So we're in a whole new world.
Okay.
And we meet some new characters and
oops.
That's okay. And then
I'm messing up our whole sheet.
You're okay. And then this is where we get to the fun. And like we were just talking about, like, this is why you go to the movie. You see the trailer for the movie and you're like, oh, that looks so good.
Right. So some of my favorite, and I know I only had never watched this movie, which really disappointed me, you guys. She doesn't have her cult classic 80 movies watched.
I have most of them watched.
Girls just want to have fun. Okay. Maybe we should do a poll about who's watched Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Or you could know I'm kind of an idiot, but it's okay.
We have a comment coming in. Hold on.
I know. What are they saying? Like, no.
I don't know if I can open it in screen share. We'll get to it.
But it's like, it's kind of the training, right? And it's any dance competition movie. But it's when these characters have to come together and they have to become the best to compete at the and they're having fun. Maybe they're not getting along, but it's forcing them to be together. And I love the part in Girls Just Want to Have Fun when, the Catholic girl and the bad boy, they have to meet and they have to go out in secret and come to, go to a dance club and do that. It's cute. It's fun. That's one I think about. That's fun. There's a ton of fun and games, fun and, like if we were really writing a story about the old man and his son on a journey, this would be the part, like they're fighting over the play music, they're seeing the really cool,
It's going to be the jokes. It's going to be like the humor, the action, the car breaks down and then like they're changing the tire and some, this is like, good. Yeah, this is the stuff that you go to the movie for. And again, we'll break that down with Nemo because we watched the trailer just to see. We found humor, chase scenes, action, try, fail. In any action movie, it's the training, right? Mm-hmm. Wonder Woman, when she's training with the swords, right? Mm-hmm. It's fun. Yeah. Okay. The breaking point. This is usually about in the middle of the story, and either, your stakes are raised up, and I need to add this, or your stakes are actually raised down, but something good happens usually, or something bad happens that kind of pulls the characters together more, right? And so it's kind of a fun moment. Okay. And then all hell breaks loose. Everything goes wrong. Like, just when you think they're kind of like, things are going good, worlds collide and the shiz hits the fan, you know.
The thing I like about this point is it's all breaking loose because they're still the same people. Like they haven't actually developed into the people they need to be yet, right? They're kind of using their old skills to handle this new world and these new problems. And those old skills haven't sharpened yet. And so they haven't changed. And so it's the part that they're not prepared to handle the stuff that's happening.
Like maybe secrets come out.
Yes.
Or
people die, you know, so.
And then we get to that all is lost, where it's like, oh shoot, because of what the all hell breaking loose, everything is like ruined.
You wonder as a reader, like they can't come back from this.
Right. And so then the character goes into the dark night of the soul moment where they have to kind of go within and do like that soul searching, that introspection, the shift internally.
And usually in this moment, in the dark night of the soul, you'll have an outside character that will help give them a clue to a solution, right? But it's when they don't have any clues, like, or it's like in Shakespeare, like in acting, it's that play, it's that moment. It's called Dios Machina. Oh,
Machina or
Machina.
Okay.
And it's like that when like the hand of God reaches down and touches you, right? And so, and sometimes it's that. I mean, sometimes it's, you know, it's the miracle that comes before. What's next?
The glimmer of hope.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
That they realize like there's a way to dig out.
Maybe there's a solution. Maybe there's a way that I can fix this.
Yeah.
And then we have the Hail Mary pass.
Boom! Touchdown.
She writes sports romance, so we had to.
It's cheesy. Sorry. But it's the part. This is a cool part too, because kind of the whole team has rallied around. So if you have those side characters that are kind of quirky, they help you put on this great date, right? Or whatever, or you know, whatever it is, you kind of rally the whole team in to make this magic moment.
And then we have this like really satisfying resolution because we've been through the highs and the lows. And it like brings everything full circle. We get closure.
Yeah. The denouement. I can't say it. I say it really bad.
Denouement. We're very French.
And it's cool when it's done. I mean, when I first started learning about the beats, I remember learning, okay, in the first scene, it should kind of be a match to the last scene. It's just an exact opposite, right? And it's always a fun scene. I mean, it's overdone in airports, right? It's overdone in airports, but it could be anywhere.
Well, explain it. Describe how you mean it's overdone in airports.
So like, you know, maybe they meet and that's their first cute meet is in the airport. They bump into each other. One of them makes the other one lose, you know, they don't get to their flight on time. They hate each other, whatever. Then at the very final, right, it would be a matching just reversed. They'd be in an airport going on a honeymoon together. It might be part of the epilogue, right? And they're like, it's just opposite. They're all, can I get you a drink? Maybe it's the opposite. He spilled the drink on her before. It can be whatever, you know, but it's just, readers love it. I love it. I watch a lot of Hallmark movies over Christmas. I like it.
Hallmark movies follow this formula, guys. So we have our final score. We have the denouement, the after show interviews. Yeah. Like it's just kind of where we feel everything's wrapped up with a neat little bow. So let's escape out of screen share, stop share. Okay. Because I want to see what this comment is. Oh, should I have seen something other than bring the heat? This is the Ace story. Okay, so did everyone, just really quickly, did everyone get to see this Excel document as we scrolled through it? If you could just type yes in the chat window. Oh, interesting.
No? You couldn't? Sorry, my voice is slower.
That's interesting. Well, we will send you a copy of this. Sorry, I thought in screen share it would show you all the movements that we did through the Excel document, but you'll get a copy of this. So we explained everything, and now we're going to go back and we're going to plug in Finding Nemo.
Do it.
So let me hold your notes, and we'll just keep.
Okay.
Our faces on
You
here.
know what? Okay.
So in Finding Nemo, we start out with Bring the Heat. And if you guys remember from the movie, we start out with Marlin and his wife, and they've just built this beautiful home on the edge of the drop-off, and they're checking out the amazing view, and then like the unthinkable happens. And a nasty fish.
That's why I was going to say that's kind of combined, and sometimes it is, right, if it's not a romance, but Bring the Heat and Life as We Know It would be combined.
Like turned
right?
upside down.
So
maybe.
for Nemo, it was more like an ordinary world, right? They had a great world, they had their family.
Well, they had their little baby eggs, and then the scary fish comes and like kills everything except for the one little egg that survives. And then we have our little Nemo with his little gimp fin, right?
Yes.
And so then we kind of still, like, it moves into Life as We Know It, where Marlin has moved way far away from the drop-off to keep Nemo in a really safe
because his wife is dead too.
They live in a bubble, like it's just the two of them.
So
and
Nemo's decided, or Marlin's decided to protect him.
Yep, major anxiety. Like, I mean, he's like, anyway, just helicopter parent, right?
Yeah.
And it's Nemo's first day of school. And he goes to school, and they're going to the drop-off to have their big field trip. And Marlin finds out, and he's like, what? And they run to the drop-off, and all the kids are kind of sitting around like in awe of the butt. Which is my favorite part. It's a boat, guys, if you haven't seen Nemo. But they're kind of daring each other to go touch the butt. And Marlin shows up, and he's freaking out, and he's so upset with Nemo for going to the drop-off. And while they're having this argument, Nemo just has had it. And this is where he makes his big character decision.
Yes. And hold on, let me insert really quick. Not to overwhelm you, okay? But once you start using a beat sheet, you're going to start realizing every character actually has to make all these things happen to all these characters in a really well-developed story. Like Nemo has a super well-developed story, right? And so for Nemo, that's his decision, is he decides.
His comes before Marlin's.
Yeah.
So Nemo goes, and he swims off, and he touches the butt. And as he's swimming back, that's when his world gets turned upside down. He gets picked up by the scuba diver, and he disappears.
Yeah.
And then Marlin has to make this decision himself if he's going to go after Nemo into this big wide ocean full of scary things. And he makes the decision because he loves Nemo, and he takes off. And then this is where we get into our B story, okay? A whole new world. And they both have a whole new world.
Well, and that's when we were discussing this, Avonlea was saying, you know, gosh, each of them has their own B story.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Like, that is why we love Disney so much, because they, oh my gosh, they bring it to these movies. So keep going.
So we have Nemo in his little fish tank, and we have Marlin swimming out the big ocean. And you pointed out as we were talking about this, it's funny because they were both in probably they wanted to be in each other's shoes.
Exactly.
Like Marlin would have been more comfortable in the fish tank in his little bubble,
protected.
And Nemo wanted to be out exploring and having adventures. And so they were kind of both kind of challenged in situations that they were uncomfortable with. So we have these B characters. We meet Dory, and then Dory and Marlin go on these crazy adventures, and they meet sharks, and they meet sea turtles, and they go down into the really scary dark abyss and almost get eaten by the big electric fish. And this is the fun and games.
Fun and games. Okay.
This is the trailer. This is why you go see the movie, and you see the funny jokes that happen and the mix-ups and
it's
all that good stuff. And then same thing is kind of happening for Nemo in the tank. He has his new cast of characters and his new friends that he's making, and they kind of have their funny moments, and they have Nemo and that one fish trying to escape the fish tank. And so we kind of go through the fun and games. But then we get to this breaking point where the stakes are raised.
And I was going to say, the thing that's interesting in the fun is that it's the training, right? And Marlin was being trained. Like he didn't really want to help Dory, but he found himself having to help Dory, right? And so he was growing as a character. He would do more things that he wouldn't necessarily do because he's helping Dory. Same thing with Nemo. He was growing. He was learning how the world really was. with these other characters. And so they were giving them the skills they needed to, you know, push the story forward. So,
well, and like there's even those mirror moments like where he's in the fish tank and they try to scoop Nemo out and all the fish swim in with him and they say, swim down, swim down. That's his training for a big scene later in the movie.
right.
So yeah, good point. So breaking point, stakes are raised. Like, can you think of what that crucial moment is for you in Nemo? I don't know if I've identified that so much as it gets to the point where Marlin's made it to the bay. He's going in. Is it maybe when they think?
Is it when they have to jump in the?
Well, yeah, they have to jump in a bird's mouth.
That's what I'm thinking, because that raised the stakes, right? We didn't know what was going to happen.
Jump in my mouth if you want to live, which is like the opposite of what you think a fish would do, right? You don't jump in a bird's mouth if you want to live. But then, okay, so all hell breaks loose. Like, and it kind of actually happens in the movie. Like the bird flies into the dentist's office and the fish are freaking out and Nemo gets flushed down the drain by mistake, which they've learned that's where fish go to die.
You're right.
So they just, and he was playing dead. So they think he's dead. Okay. This is like all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
Marlin thinks Nemo's dead. Nemo's like, okay, now what do I do? I'm trapped. Like I just made it down to the ocean. And he starts looking for his dad, and his dad's already leaving.
Yep. Yeah. And so that it's kind of like then it becomes the all is lost.
Right? Because Marlin's like, it's over.
Yeah.
I tried. I failed. My son is dead.
Yeah.
And we actually kind of get it twice in Nemo because you have, but we know as an audience, Nemo's okay.
They're not, you're right. But the
But
different
Marlin's
characters have
nervous.
different storylines.
Yep. So then they do reunite because of Dory, and then they end up caught in a fisherman's net, and Nemo remembers his experience in the fish tank, and he's like, Dad, I know how we can get out of this. And Nemo, I guess that's when Marlin has his moment where he has to turn around and say, you're right, I trust you. He trusts his son. And they all swim down and they get out, but Nemo, it looks like he hasn't made it. It looks like in the process he's been crushed and you think he's dead. And it's like, oh. And then and that's kind of also the dark night. So like, I don't know how we're gonna get out of this.
Yeah.
And then the glimmer of hope is like, okay, we're gonna swim down and we're all gonna get out of the net. And then you have that moment where you're like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
And then he's not dead and he's okay.
Yay!
And it's a happily ever after. They all make it back to where they came from.
But in the final moment, the final score, right? The denouement is the opposite scene. Do you remember that?
Yep.
From the beginning, is they're back where they were, but there's a lot more freedom, and the school's like doing more. Am I right? Like,
yeah. Well, I think that they are going to the drop off, and he's like, "Okay, have fun, high five." Like,
yes,
I'm not afraid for you to go to the drop off anymore, and then you kind of have those funny moments too as the credits are rolling, and you kind of find out what happened with some of the other characters. That his friends finally escaped the fish tank, and they're floating in their little plastic baggies in the ocean, and they're like, now what?
That's right. That's right.
It was funny. So that's just kind of a rough overview of how we've applied an example.
We were trying to find a broad movie that most of you would have seen, right? Yeah. Not just a cult classic 80s movie.
Right. But we talked about like what are some love stories, and like you can apply this to all of them, like while you were sleeping. Oh my gosh, where she makes the decision to pretend like she's this guy's fiance who's in a coma. And then you have the B story where you meet his family, and then the love story, and it's so cute. So that's one that we thought of. We thought of like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Sweet Home Alabama, 13 Going on 30, Legally Blonde. Like you can apply this formula to all these movies, and I think you guys will see, like we said, your homework also is to kind of watch the big blockbuster movies and see how this formula works. And I know we keep talking about movies, but you're like, wait, I'm supposed to be writing a book. But it's just a really easy way to illustrate.
Especially for structure, right? Like the thing is Hollywood is very invested in making a lot of money, okay? And so if they produce a movie, they're really trying to hit the beats because they want you to be really satisfied. So I went to a workshop with Dave Wolverton about 8 years ago, and he actually green-lighted movies for Hollywood. He writes fantasy, he writes a whole bunch of different inspirational stories, and so he kind of introduced me to really having a well-formulated book, and how that will change, how much readers like your book.
And become your fans, like that,
Die-hard fans.
that they want to come back to your books over and over because they know you're going to deliver what they're hoping for.
And I was thinking, this is silly, but every year I'd go to this family reunion, and I had this uncle. He was like a great uncle, and he would always tell these dirty jokes, okay, that my mom didn't want us to listen to. But he was like the nicest. Anyway, there's a point to this. But his jokes, the reason they were so funny is because he had timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had timing. And later, like, I thought about how all of us are storytellers in different ways. And it's people that really have a good delivery that you want to hear them tell a story. They're the ones that you go to those family reunions and you want to sit by and you want to hear Uncle Frank's stories because he just has the timing. Yeah. Right? And that's what that's what we want to teach you and help you with, is just having that timing. So when people sit down to read your book, they'll be like, dang, that was a good book.
Right.
They might not know why.
Well, and this is like a much more robust version of what we were taught in grade school.
Oh my
we
gosh.
were kind of reviewing this outline last week, and we were like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that in 5th grade, where you have like your introduction, and then you have the build up, and then you have the climax here. Oh, look, your sign's doing it for me.
Yeah.
And then we have like, it goes down, and then we like resolution, and then we have like the closure. Remember, we have that formula that went like this little triangle. This is a much more robust version of that, where we fill that in with like, here's everything that happens up to here, and then you have your like over big moment, and then we start to wind down and have closure.
Yeah. I hope, you guys, I hope that you love this. I hope that it gives you, I don't know, when I started discovering this, it helped me write better. It helped me write faster. It helped me get clarity of where the story was going to go. And there's so much freedom within, the playbook. There's so much freedom. And, Avonlea and I were just talking about how character is so important. And it's one of the next ones, we're going to talk about character and why when you have a strong character and you have the right beats, man, it's like powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
It's power.
And you guys, again, this is a 12-week program. We have 12 lessons planned. So it's like our temptation is to just like, I'll give it to you all at once, but it's impossible for you to take it all in at once. And so we're going to get to things like character development. Yes. We're going to get to what happens when your characters don't behave the way that you want them to. There's a lot that's going to be coming. But just from today's discussion on the beat sheet, and to let you know, next lesson, we are going to be actually creating a beat sheet for you to like witness that process. So just be prepared that next week we're going to be doing this again, and maybe while we're going through that process, you can be taking notes and kind of coming up with your own playbook as we go through the process of us hashing one out together.
I was going to say, we talked about doing a story for Avonlea,
or we could help Taylor Hart come up with her next book.
Or a story for you.
So you guys give it some thought, and maybe next week we will do another poll, and you guys can vote and tell us who we're going to create a beat sheet for. However, just before we have closure here, wrap up in a couple seconds, we've opened the Q&A window. So if there are any questions that you've jotted down throughout this process that you would like to ask us in the next few minutes, now is the time. Let us know. What are your burning questions? What came up for you as we were talking about this? And how does this apply to what you want to write? Just let us know. We'll give you guys a few seconds to fill that in.
They're like, crap, I have to write something.
Type fast. Oh, okay. We have how to write a non-story book, more of a self-help. And we pulled this up in the Q&A window. If you guys click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, that's where we're going to pull in Q&A questions. The chat window is okay for now, but okay, so the question is how to write a self-help. We actually brought this question up before we started recording today, because I said, I know some of my followers are thinking about writing a nonfiction self-help book. So what are your thoughts there?
Okay. We can, I was telling Avonlea, for me, after writing some books on writing for writers.
So self-help, nonfiction.
Self-help, I've been thinking a lot about this. It's really at a macro level, it's you're finding that problem that the group of people you're targeting have. Like, what's the problem, right? For me, it was mastering the mental game. the reason I decided to focus on that is because I have so many authors coming at me. How do you stay focused? How do you get through when you're blocked? How do you do all these things? And so I wanted to take that broad thing and then hone it down at the, chapter level. Well, okay, here's a problem. Now here's the solution. Here's another problem. Here's the solution. Here's the problem. So I would challenge you, if you're doing a self-help book, to think of your overarching problem that you're going to solve for people, right? And then start breaking it down into ways that you have done it. How have you helped overcome this problem?
Or help someone else overcome.
Or help someone else.
Like, I think this person might be a chiropractor who's run a really successful clinic.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, how you've helped others. And so break that into chapters and always think problem solution. Problem solution examples, right, will fit in each one. But that's just a simple, sometimes I think we psych ourselves out when we think we have to do all this, especially for nonfiction, you're solving a problem. So.
Awesome. Any other questions before we wrap it up? If you want to plug that into the Q&A window, here's the cool thing for you guys to know in the future. We will use the Q&A window and you can see other people's questions and upvote the question. If you're like, oh yeah, I had that question too, you can vote the question up. So we'll use the Q&A window from now on. And the nice thing is you guys can start using that Q&A window, plugging your questions in as we go along. And then when we have a natural break in the flow, the conversation, we can pull that up and answer your questions as we go. If you guys want to start using that awesome feature.
And you guys, I'm so grateful. Avonlea is like the mastermind tech person. And so I just really appreciate
Not really,
her.
but we figured out.
She's doing amazing.
So I'm the kind of person who figures things out. So thanks everyone for joining us this week. Again, next week, we will be creating a template, a playbook. So you guys give it some thought, decide who are we going to create a playbook for, and you can watch us hash it out live. Or her. She's the pro.
No, I just mean we'll do it together.
Okay. All right. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See ya.